because I think we should call an audible here. I know we were planning on starting with the Browns.
No, let's go with the Guardians
first. Let's flip-flop, do the Guardians. I think, in fact, let's do the Shohei Ohtani thing real quick, then get to the Guardians' grades because we're talking about transactions right now. No?
Yeah, we could do that. Steve, let's go down. We're going to have to call an audible here.
Call an audible. You guys fix on that. And what were you going to say, G?
Oh, I was going to say the hitters, yes, they'd be resigning the hitters, but I don't think that they're going to ever, like if you got a 6-year period, I think they're just going to keep the guys for 6 years and let them ride out. I don't think they're going to ever sign
pitchers?
No.
I think the only way we're going to see the Guardians sign a pitcher long term is if they sign them in their first year, basically, where they can get a massive like if you could sign Gavin Williams or Tanner Bybee right now, I think they would do something like that. If you can get one of those guys for 8 years, 9 years. But to be fair to the Guardians, they don't – listen, I've talked about how they don't spend enough a million times. Everybody knows where we stand on that. However, to be fair to them, as you said, signing pitchers into the 30s doesn't really make a lot of sense.
It's incredible risk. Even a 9-year deal for Gavin Williams is unbelievable risk.
Right. Pitchers are risky. They get hurt all the time. Now, Gavin Williams and Bybee, those are guys I would take a chance on. They're big. They're strong. They got great stuff, especially, Bybee's got great stuff. Williams may have super great stuff.
I'm kind of coming around on the 6 years. Just keep them for 6 years and move on. I'm kind of coming around on it. Especially, it feels like players are developing faster now. Guys are making more of an impact earlier on in their careers. So ride him for 6. And if he has Tommy John surgery and he's not the same pitcher, you're not tied into him.
But that's it. I'm saying, again, I would only sign them at this point. That's it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want paying these guys in their 30s. They can't afford it. And most pitchers in their 30s don't pitch well. There are some, but the percentage is very small. By the way, this kid Skeens, who was the first overall draft pick by who took him again?
The Pirates out of LSU.
There's no reason he couldn't be in the majors even this year.
He'll be in the majors this year. I fully believe
I don't know if he will because it's the Pirates, but 100% by next year.
And they had such a heavy workload.
Right, he pitched a lot at the end of the year.
A lot of times you shut these guys down for a little bit.
Before we do grades,
I
do want to touch on Shohei Ohtani real quick. And we'll do this quick. It's not super long.
Yeah.
We don't have to play the tag, but I'll tell you what he said. But he was asked essentially, which American League All-Star are you most excited to play with? His answer was Jose Ramirez.
Yeah.
So before we get into
technically it wasn't play with. Technically it was to be in the dugout with.
Who's he most excited to be around?
Well, no, because he said Ramirez is funny. He likes talking with him. It didn't really. I don't think it really had anything to do with his play, but even though I'm sure he respects his play.
Further proof that both of those guys speak English plenty well.
Despite
the fact that in the media they both don't.
To be fair to both Shohei and Jose Ramirez, of course they speak some level of English, but they're more comfortable speaking in their native language. They're stars.
I'm not knocking.
Yeah, no, I know you're not. But some people complain about that, and if I knew Japanese, okay, which I certainly don't. I wish I did, but if I knew Japanese, I wouldn't be able to speak it as well. I could speak English. So if I was being interviewed, well, I wouldn't want to do it in Japanese. I'd want to do it in English because I'm more comfortable with the nuances of the language. So while Otani and Jose Ramirez, of course, they speak some level of English. There's nuances that if you're not a native speaker, you're not gonna get as well.
And we will use it against you in a court of law.
People will. 100%.
I wasn't saying
why would Ohtani say that?
You weren't saying it as a knock, but some people do.
Yeah, they'll take that little word that you missed.
Why can't he speak English? Like that same idiot, if he had to move to Japan, would learn Japanese. No. Of course he wouldn't. Go ahead.
So my question to you guys.
Yeah.
We understand that there is essentially a 0.1% chance the Guardians would actually pursue Shohei.
Yeah.
Now, after hearing him say that he was most excited to be in the dugout with Jose, in your mind, is there anything he could say or do? Is there anything in the world Shohei Ohtani could say or do to make the Guardians front office legitimately consider putting together a super package to try and acquire him?
No. Well, first of all, the Guardians shouldn't trade for him. That doesn't make sense. Not at this point. Or at the beginning of the season, I was like, yeah, let's get crazy. What are you going to do? At this point, it doesn't really make sense. Now,
what's the difference in the start of the season and now? They're a first-place team.
Yeah, but they're not that good. They're not very good.
I'm aware of that, but if you wanted them at the start of the season, they're a first-place team at the All-Star break.
It's a fair. Let me just say.
Here we go. Yes, sir.
It's a fair point, and in the end, if they did it, I'd be perfectly happy. But there's no chance they're going to do it.
But there is one thing he could say.
What's the one thing?
There is something he could say. I don't like money. I don't need that other $450 million I'm going to get this winter. I love Cleveland so much, I will sign here for $130 million.
He has to pull, I'll give you an example. The great Andre Dawson, Hall of Famer, who I interviewed this week. It was one of my career highlights because he's one my favorite players growing up were first Bill Buckner, then it was Ryne Sandberg, and Lee Smith and Andre Dawson. Those were my favorite players as a kid. I told this, I fanboyed out a little in my interview with Andre Dawson in the beginning. Before we started, I was like, I was like, you're one of my favorite players of all time. Got to say, I'm a huge fan. Anyway, he was awesome. I did like 25 minutes with him, so check out my podcast, which I put out Wednesday. But I don't know if you remember this, Jason. I don't know if you remember this, G. You're both old enough. Andre Dawson was a great player for the Expos.
Hawk.
But it destroyed his knees playing on that awful AstroTurf.
Yep.
And the year he hit free agency, he was the biggest free agent, but it was the collusion year. Do you remember that?
No.
Remember the players ended up suing the owners and they won?
Yeah.
The owners colluded. Nobody was offering Andre Dawson a contract. He was one of the best players in baseball. He was a free agent, and nobody offered him a contract because there was collusion going on. So he basically went out in the media and said, I want to play for the Cubs. Give me a blank contract. I'll sign it. And he signed for like not even, I think it was under $1 million a year.
Wow.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was an absurdly low contract. As a fan, selfishly, and a kid, I wasn't thinking about the ramifications of it. I was so excited because he joined my team. But he gave the Cubs a blank contract, said, I want to play in Wrigley Field. What are you going to pay me?
Yeah.
I'll play for almost anything. And that's basically what he did.
Yeah.
And that would basically have to be the same thing with Otani.
I mean, that's obviously not going to happen.
Of course.
This is not reality that we're talking about. But that's what it would take. And if he ever came out and said that, then I think you have an actual discussion, put together a package, and do your best to go get him. And even then, I don't know if the Angels would
What
trade
if the
him.
ramifications? What are the ramifications for the Dolans if he comes out and say, look, market value for me is probably like 500, 600.
Yeah, easy.
I'm gonna do it for 225. If he said, what? They would get eviscerated. They would get destroyed in the media if he said 225.
They are not signing a $200 million contract.
People,
I don't care who it is.
I would be.
I'd lose my mind.
I would lose my mind.
There's no excuse.
There's
I
no
think in the end,
excuse.
Jason is 98% right, but I would be so pissed.
Well,
if that
we'd never know.
we'd never know because he'd never say that.
But if he said that,
in La La
Listen,
Land,
I
that
love
happened.
Cleveland. I don't love Cleveland that much. I ain't turning down $300 million to stay here.
Let's face it. The reality is, like, the guy. There's no Japanese culture in Cleveland, and I think that's important.
That's why
Maybe I'm wrong.
That's why I think Seattle is a real player for him this winter.
No doubt. I'd like him to go to the Cubs, but and I think financially they could pay him.
I don't.
But he's not going to Chicago.
I don't, man. Like, that's like saying, like, if I'm in business, right?
Yeah.
And they say, listen, there's a genius out here. This guy, there's a Tesla out here. There's guys out here. This guy is a genius engineer, or this guy is the best financial mind in the world. And I say, okay, where is he at? And he's over here, and he said, how much money do you want to pay me? He said, well, we'll talk about it. The fact that my company could not even be in the mix for it as a Fortune 500 company would be, I would want to get out of business.
I know, it's terrible. But the reality is there's only a few teams that are going to be in the mix. All those teams are going to be interested. And he's probably going to end up with either the Dodgers or the Mariners, I think, are the two most likely teams he ends up with. I don't think he's going back to the Angels. And by the way, the Angels are stupid. They won't trade him. They're stupid not to because they could get such a haul. Yeah. And you know what? Even if they want to re-sign him, why couldn't they trade him and then in theory re-sign him anyway?
Because aside from Aroldis, I don't know that I can recall another. I feel like there was one about 20 years ago, but I don't remember what it was. It's very rare to trade a guy and then get him back.
Of course it's very rare. But that's because the team trading him is usually not interested in signing the guy in many cases or can't afford it in many cases. Because it's not usually big market teams that trade guys like that.
That is crazy. You just said that.
I mean, if I'm the Angels, you could completely restock your farm system with trading him.
If you did that, would the league step in and say, like, if there was, like, if Shohei says, trade, here's what we're gonna do: trade me to one of these teams.
Yeah,
we're gonna get everything they got.
You know what?
We're gonna come
Carlos, kind of genius.
Carlos Boozer told the Cavs that and wound up in Utah.
Jason, in the end, they'd be stupid not to trade him. They're out of it.
I think if you trade him, I agree. I think they should trade him.
Yeah.
But I think by trading him, you're giving up any realistic chance of re-signing him.
I mean, they got to know how realistic it is to this point anyway. If they really think that, I mean, if I were them, I'd say, if I were him, I would, and I wanted to stay, I'd say to them, let's trade me and let's,
Get everything they got and come give me that bag and we'll be back.
Get a better team.
Okay, and Carlos Boozer told the Cavs that and signed in Utah.
But Carlos,
I'm just telling you, you can't take these guys at their word and what they say in July. Things change.
I hear you.
I get it.
Fair. I'd still trade him because they could get a haul for him.
As a player.
But they won't. They won't. There's no chance they're going to trade him. I'll be surprised if they do. But I wonder if it holds up the trade deadline, the possibility of teams going all in for Shohei.
Speaking of going all in,
yeah.
Well, I know we've done a little bit of promotion for this on the show, but we haven't fully blown it out. But Earl, myself, and Anthony have been doing a behind-the-glass live stream / podcast once a week. And last night, this kind of topic came up, whether or not the Guardians should be all in for Ohtani if he was put on the trade block. And I want to play a clip from Earl on the show yesterday speaking about the opportunity to go all in. Steve, play.
But the fear in this city to do something outside of the box, something outlandish or something just out of this world, personally, man, it drives me crazy. People have this notion that we can't do this or we shouldn't do this because 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we might be dead. This world as we know it might not be the same. I get it, preparing for the future, but sometimes, man, you got to live in the now. And if somehow, some way, the Cleveland Guardians can get their hands on Shohei Ohtani now, damn the future, damn him being a rental, try to go win a World Series now. I think people forget the ultimate goal of any sport is to win a championship. And if you can win a championship now by mortgaging some of your future, then you do it. And if you feel like not mortgaging your future and building out long-term wins you a championship, then you do it. It's not about the road you take. It's just about getting to your destination of winning the championship.
Max.
It's so hard. I get what Earl's saying, and I generally agree with him. The problem is, and if the Guardians did trade for Shohei Ohtani, I'd be thrilled. I would not criticize them. But you would have to give up at least one of Williams and Bybee in that deal, and a whole lot more on top of that.
I think it is organizational malpractice to trade for him, given where they're at in the standings and given realistically what.
I just don't think they have a chance. But
now in 2020, I was advocating exactly that move. Like, you knew it was your last year with Frankie.
Yeah.
So go for it. Like, go all in. Trade Nolan Jones. And that was back when I used to be on Twitter more, and people were like, "You just don't understand how it works." I'm like, "No, I know exactly how it works. I know that some of these prospects aren't going to hit, but go all in while you have your last chance with Lindor and then recoup whatever you can in trades in the offseason." But in this situation, you don't have that. Other than Bieber, you don't have that where there's a clock ticking on any of these guys. And this just doesn't feel like the year. I think it's malpractice to try and trade Gavin Williams and Bybee and some of these other guys and mortgage so much for a brief run when it guarantees you nothing, and this team still has a ton of holes. I just don't think that this is the. There are other years where I would say yes, now is the time. I don't think this season is that season.
I always thought it was funny when people talk about mortgages, like mortgaging the future. Like, it's easy to say don't mortgage it, but the people that got houses that live nice, they mortgage it. And they tell you not to do it. You living in an apartment, don't mortgage your future. You're like, but listen, I would like to enjoy my today.
Yeah.
What if today I can not live in the projects? What if I can not live next to this creepy old guy? I would probably mortgage it. So I understand what Earl is saying. Would it be kind of crazy to give up your best prospects a little bit when you don't think they're that good? Sure. But my question is, I don't think they would do it under any circumstances. Because when they did have a chance to do it when Frankie was there, and they did have the team, and they did look like they had the pieces, and Jose Ramirez is in his prime, and Frankie is too, they still wouldn't have made that move.
They did it in 2016 when they traded for Andrew Miller.
And by all accounts, they were in on Bryce Harper that summer that Harper was coming up on free agency. Yeah. So I do think in the right situation, I think that they would be aggressive and make that move.
I know it makes no sense for them to trade for Ohtani. It really makes no sense. However, I would love it if they did.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it would set baseball on fire.
It would
set
be
the
amazing.
city on fire for 3 months.
It would make every Guardians game must-watch
That's
appointment
right.
television.
That's right. I mean, he's literally – well, no, he's not literally. he is like adding 2 superstars.
Yeah.
2.
Thank you for the country. Here's what I'm gonna tell you about Japan. Thank you for doing something unconventional. Here in the United States, we are too conservative about everything.
Oh, God,
now,
yes.
And so you found the best player almost ever because you said we're not going to pigeonhole him into doing one or the other.
And now we'll eventually see more guys. Now,
yes.
Are they ever going to be as good as him?
No.
But the Giants last year drafted a kid who's pitching and hitting in the minors. They just drafted another kid this year who's pitching and going to pitch and hit in the minors.
Thank you.
It's not just that he pitches and hits. It's that he's elite at both.
And I don't think that we hold kids back from doing that.
Yeah, we do.
Brendan McKay did it with the Rays. He got hurt. Like, that's the thing. It exposes you to so many injuries.
Before Otani,
there were
people may be capable. Who knows if they were capable of being this good at
This is 1
both.
in a billion.
No, but there were other guys that you could have tried it with.
You could have developed
that
that
was
skill
never
set.
a possibility in baseball.
They would have never tried it.
Maybe CeCe. CeCe was a good hitter.
I don't think it's 1 in a billion. I think it's, do you practice it?
I think it's 1 in a billion to be this good at both.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes, but if you can't be Otani, I think that there's guys out there who can be all-stars at doing it.
I mean, there are.
He's a Hall of Fame.
By the way, Michael Lorenzen, who was an all-star only because the Tigers had to have somebody, but he's having a pretty decent year. He was being used as a part-time hitter in Cincinnati towards the end of his time there. Like, he was a pinch hitter.
Rick Ankiel back in the day.
Yeah.
There's a guy on the Giants, Reggie Crawford, who was drafted in the first round last year.
I just said that, Mike. Where the hell are you?
I was looking up.